You'd think criminals would at least try to be smart about it, but what you're about to see will genuinely make you question how these people remember to breathe. We're talking about a guy who mailed evidence straight back to his victim with a return address, a thief whose stolen parrot literally snitched on him at the police lineup, and a counterfeiter so bad he couldn't even spell the name of his own country. These are 49 people who somehow made it through life without a single brain cell filing a shift. Stick around, because number 36 alone will have you losing your mind. Hit subscribe, because after watching these absolute legends of stupidity, you're going to feel like a genius. 1. Somewhere in America, the dumbest bank heist ever attempted is still making detectives laugh decades later. Back in the day, a bank robber strutted into a branch acting like a tough guy and slid the teller a demand note that practically begged to get him arrested. The absolute genius had scribbled his threats on the back of his own deposit slip, which already had his full name and account number printed right there in crisp ink. The teller stared at the paper, then at him, then calmly called the cops while he stood there, feeling like a criminal mastermind. 2. Breaking into a stranger's house to steal a television sounds simple, but one American burglar managed to turn it into a home renovation project. He slipped inside a quiet suburban home, spotted a fancier TV than expected, and got hit with crippling indecision over whether stealing it was even justified. So instead of grabbing the thing and bolting, the absolute brainiac spent 2 solid hours rearranging the family's furniture, trying to convince himself the layout proved they were rich enough to deserve it. During this redecorating spree, he set his phone down and forgot it completely. 3. Picture the world's most anxious getaway driver, and somehow the real one was worse. Parked outside a bank while his crew rampaged inside, this sweaty wheelman started spiraling into a full panic attack behind the steering wheel. His brilliant solution was to grab his phone and dial 911 to report a robbery in progress, conveniently forgetting that the robbery in question was being committed by his own friends about 30 feet away. Dispatchers traced the call, cops surrounded the building, and the entire crew walked out of the bank straight into handcuffs thanks to their loyal lookout man. 4. Stealing a safe sounds cool until the thief in question cannot actually open the dang thing. One frustrated American crook hauled away a heavy safe, wrestled with it for days, and completely failed to crack the lock no matter what tools he tried. So this absolute clown packaged the entire safe back up, slapped on shipping labels, and mailed it back to the original owner with a furious note complaining that the safe was too hard. He also helpfully included his return address on the box. Police followed the trail right to his doorstep within hours. 5. A shoplifter walking out of a store with stolen goods crammed under his hat sounds clever until gravity gets involved. This particular American genius wandered through a department store stuffing small items underneath the brim, then strolled toward the exit, feeling like the slickest thief alive. On his way out, he locked eyes with the security guard and decided to play it cool by tipping his hat in a polite, gentlemanly greeting. Everything he had stolen came raining down onto the polished floor in front of the guard, who simply sighed and grabbed his radio. 6. Drug deals usually require a certain amount of stealth, which one American dealer apparently never received the memo about. Mid-transaction with a customer in a parking lot, his phone slipped against something in his pocket and butt-dialed 911 without him noticing a single thing. The call stayed wide open for 14 straight minutes while he negotiated prices, complained about competitors, and bragged about his stash. All of it recorded by dispatch. Police traced the live signal directly to the parking lot and arrived while he was still counting cash with his customer. 7. A robbery committed using fruit instead of an actual firearm should not exist outside of cartoons. Yet here we are. One hopeful American crook walked into a convenience store, holding a paper bag with a suspicious shape inside, claiming a banana was a hidden pistol pointed at the cashier. The cashier squinted, recognized the unmistakable curve of produce, and helpfully offered the robber a straighter banana from the fruit display near the register, suggesting it might look slightly more like a gun. The robber actually considered it before fleeing in shame straight into waiting officers. To gauge, snack food has ruined more criminal careers than any detective ever will. After smashing a window and slipping into an American home, one burglar grabbed himself a comforting bag of Cheetos to munch on while ransacking the place. Which is honestly relatable until things went sideways. When sirens approached, the dust-covered crook bolted out the back and dove into a bush in the yard to hide. Officers arrived, glanced down, and simply followed the bright orange trail of cheesy fingerprints leading from the broken window directly to the shrub where he was crouching. 9. Carjackers usually have the basic decency to leave town after stealing a vehicle. But not this one. One American car thief yanked a man's vehicle right out of his driveway and immediately drove it to a nearby fast food joint because crime apparently builds an appetite. After hitting the drive-thru, the genius parked in the same lot, reclined the seat, and began calmly enjoying his fries and burger. 20 minutes later, the original owner happened to drive by, spotted his own car, and found the thief still chewing happily with grease on his shirt. 10. Bank robbers are supposed to know which window to approach, but one American crook clearly skipped that lesson entirely. Walking into a busy branch with his threatening demand note clutched in a sweaty hand, he marched straight up to the first counter he saw and slid the paper across. Unfortunately, the counter belonged to the loan department, where a confused employee read the note, smiled politely, and asked him to please take a seat while she stepped away. The robber sat there obediently flipping through magazines until officers strolled in to collect him. 11. Robbing a pizza place is dumb enough on its own, but leaving a Yelp review afterward takes the whole pepperoni pie. One hungry American crook stormed into a local pizzeria, waved a weapon around, and ran off with cash and a few hot pies tucked under his arm like a starving raccoon. Back home, he apparently felt the crust was disappointing, so the absolute genius logged onto the restaurant's website and filed an angry complaint about the food quality, using his real name and email address. Detectives matched the review to the robbery within a single afternoon. 12. Frozen turkeys are not designed for shoplifting in summer, a lesson one American thief learned the hard way. In the middle of a sweltering July afternoon, this brainiac wandered into a grocery store and shoved a massive frozen turkey under his jacket like it was a winter coat accessory. As he waddled toward the exit, the heat and his own body warmth began aggressively defrosting the bird against his stomach. Security spotted him and gave chase, at which point the dripping crook slipped spectacularly on his own thawed turkey puddle and crashed face first onto the tile. 13. Stealing a bird sounds harmless until that bird becomes a key witness in your criminal trial. One thief broke into an American home and snatched a colorful pet parrot, apparently believing the squawking feathered eyewitness would never become a problem. What the genius did not realize was that the bird had been trained to scream the thief's actual first name on command, a charming party trick the family taught it years earlier. During the police lineup, the parrot took one look, started shrieking his name on repeat, and the case basically solved itself right there. 14. Serial burglars usually try to leave as little evidence as humanly possible, except for one truly polite American criminal. This deeply confused crook broke into home after home across his neighborhood, and at every single house he discovered the homeowner's guest book sitting near the entryway. Driven by some powerful inner urge toward good manners, the absolute moron signed every single one with his real signature, like an estate sale visitor leaving warm regards. Detectives literally cross-referenced the guest books, matched the loopy handwriting, and walked directly to his front door with handcuffs. 15. Counterfeiters at least bother to fake real denominations, which is more than one American genius managed. Strolling into a Walmart with confidence radiating off him, this hopeful crook slapped a crisp $200 bill onto the counter to pay for a small item and demanded his change in 20s. The cashier blinked because the United States Treasury has never in history printed a $200 bill. The clerk pointed this out politely while pressing the silent alarm, and the indignant idiot stood there arguing loudly about his fake currency until officers arrived. 16. Old-school ransom notes with magazine letters glued onto paper seem clever until biology shows up. One American kidnapper put real effort into his crime, snipping out individual letters from glossy magazines and arranging them into a perfectly anonymous threatening message free of handwriting evidence. Then the absolute brainiac licked the envelope to seal it and licked another stamp for good measure. Detectives pulled his complete DNA profile off both the flap and the postage, ran it through their database, and discovered the same saliva belonged to a guy already in the system for jaywalking. 17. Wearing your work uniform during a robbery is a bold choice that one American crook decided to fully commit to. This absolute professional walked into the establishment he planned to rob, still dressed in his employer-issued shirt, complete with the company logo stitched across the chest, and his actual name embroidered on a shiny tag. Witnesses described the perpetrator to police using the exact words printed on his clothing, which made the investigation roughly as challenging as ordering a sandwich. Officers showed up at his workplace before his shift even ended that same day. 18. Smuggling cocaine inside pineapples could maybe work if the smuggler in question possessed even a single functioning brain cell. One ambitious American drug runner carefully stuffed his product inside fresh pineapples for shipment, which is admittedly creative thinking. Unfortunately, the absolute fool mixed up his shipping labels at the warehouse and accidentally slapped honest inventory stickers on every single pineapple, each one cheerfully reading "contains cocaine" in bold print. Customs agents intercepted the shipment, read the helpful labels, and confirmed the contents on the very first pineapple before bursting into uncontrollable laughter. 19. Purse snatching requires basic spatial awareness, something this American thief was apparently born without. After grabbing a woman's handbag on a busy sidewalk, the crook took off sprinting at full speed while looking back to make sure she was not chasing him. Eyes locked behind him, the absolute genius slammed face first into a thick glass storefront door he never saw coming, knocking himself completely unconscious on the pavement. The woman calmly walked over, retrieved her purse from his limp hand, and then dialed an ambulance because she was apparently a much better person than him. 20. Most criminals avoid broadcasting their crimes, but one American burglar decided radio waves were the way to go. After breaking into a small-town radio station after hours, the absolute lunatic sat down at the live broadcasting desk, flipped on the microphone, and started cheerfully hosting his own impromptu late-night show. Listeners tuning in heard a stranger rambling about random topics in a very familiar voice. Multiple people across town recognized the guy as their neighbor, their cousin, or that weird coworker from the warehouse, and started calling police within minutes of his opening monologue. 21. Bragging about a burglary on voicemail is risky enough without dialing the absolute worst possible number. After ransacking an American home, one chatty crook decided to call his buddy and leave a detailed celebratory voicemail describing every item he stole and exactly which neighborhood he hit. Unfortunately, the absolute genius misdialed by a single digit and left the entire confession on the homeowner's answering machine instead. The family came home, listened to a stranger gleefully narrating the theft of their own television, and handed the recording straight to detectives who recognized the voice immediately. 22. Counterfeit money requires basic spelling skills, which one American forger apparently considered optional. After spending weeks producing hundreds of fake bills in his basement, this dedicated criminal flooded local businesses with crisp, fresh currency, featuring one tiny problem nobody could ignore. Every single bill proudly displayed the words "Untied States" across the front in big, bold letters instead of "United States." Cashiers spotted the typo within seconds, store managers laughed for hours, and federal agents tracked the misspelled disaster back to a guy who never once bothered to proofread his own crime. 23. Robbing a retirement home bingo night sounds easy until the seniors decide they have had enough. One American crook stormed into a community room full of elderly bingo players, waved a weapon around, and demanded their cash, which was a deeply embarrassing miscalculation. The grandmas immediately bolted the doors shut, the grandpas yanked the phone cords loose, and the entire room calmly pretended the lines were broken while quietly signaling staff. 40 minutes later, the robber was still trapped inside being lectured about his life choices when officers finally walked in to collect him. 24. Robbing a store and then calling to complain about the service is a level of audacity reserved for the truly brain-dead. After cleaning out the register at a small American shop, this picky crook got home, counted his haul, and felt deeply insulted by how little cash had been inside. So the absolute fool picked up the phone, dialed the very store he just robbed, and chewed out the clerk for not keeping enough money on hand. He stayed on the line long enough for police to trace the call directly to his apartment. 25. Hiding from the law usually means avoiding cameras, not entering photography contests. One American fugitive on the run from serious charges saw his local newspaper running a most wanted photo contest, where readers submitted creative portraits of themselves looking suspicious for fun. Confident in his own handsome, menacing scowl, the absolute moron mailed in a glamour shot of himself looking like a Hollywood villain. He actually won first place. His face got printed across the entire front page of the paper, and detectives recognized him before the ink even dried on the morning edition. 26. Forgetting a wallet at the scene of a crime is bad, but this American burglar somehow made it worse than humanly possible. While ransacking a home, The absolute genius pulled out a neatly handwritten checklist of every single item he intended to steal, ticking off boxes as he went, like a productive little criminal accountant. In his rush to escape, he dropped the list, his entire wallet containing his driver's license, and a folded piece of mail with his current address, all in the middle of the living room floor for officers to find. 27. Jury duty is annoying enough without trying to dodge it from inside the courtroom you are already in. One American defendant, currently sitting through his own criminal trial, received a jury summons in the mail for unrelated proceedings that very week. Rather than mention this to literally anyone, the absolute brainiac wrote himself a fake doctor's note claiming he was too sick to serve and mailed it directly to the court. The same court personnel handling his ongoing trial immediately recognized his name, compared the signatures, and added forgery charges to his already extensive collection. 28. Stealing a car with a dog inside is a mistake, but one American carjacker took it to a brand new level of stupid. After snatching a vehicle from a parking lot, the panicking crook realized a very loud golden retriever in the back seat refused to stop barking at him for kidnapping his owner's car. Completely overwhelmed by guilt and noise, the absolute softie drove straight to the nearest veterinarian and sat down in the waiting room cradling the angry dog. Officers found him there 20 minutes later, filling out intake paperwork using his real name. 29. Stealing a boat requires the ability to operate a boat, a small detail one American thief completely overlooked. After untying a nice vessel from a busy marina dock and pushing off into open water, this hopeful pirate suddenly realized he had absolutely no idea how to steer the thing, work the throttle, or stop moving. The Coast Guard arrived to find the absolute landlubber slowly spinning in lazy circles about a quarter-mile offshore, looking miserable and slightly seasick. Onlookers had been filming the whole spectacle from the dock for nearly an hour. 30. Mailing a scam letter requires picking a target who has never investigated scams, a concept this American con artist completely failed to grasp. Working through an old mailing list with names of seemingly random retirees, the absolute genius sent out hundreds of classic Nigerian print-style letters begging for bank account details. One of those letters landed directly in the mailbox of a retired FBI fraud investigator who had spent his entire career hunting people exactly like this guy. The retiree opened it, laughed out loud, and personally walked the evidence into his former office. 31. Frequent flyer miles are a great perk unless the flight in question involves smuggling narcotics across state lines. One American drug runner boarded a domestic flight with a suitcase full of illegal product and decided he might as well earn some rewards points while committing federal crimes. The absolute genius typed his real frequent flyer number into the booking, his real name, and his real home address, then happily watched the miles pile up. When officers traced the suspicious bag back to its owner, the airline handed over a complete travel history neatly tied to his actual identity. 32. Forgetting where you parked is embarrassing for anyone, but doing it right after robbing a store is genuinely majestic. One American crook held up a small business, grabbed the cash, and bolted out the door, sprinting toward freedom across the parking lot. Halfway through his escape, the absolute brainiac realized he had no clue which row contained his getaway car. Rather than checking every aisle himself, the genius walked back inside the very store he just robbed and asked the trembling clerk if anyone had noticed where his vehicle was parked. Officers arrived seconds later. 33. Cloud storage has ruined more criminal careers than fingerprints ever did. While ransacking an American home, one burglar discovered a fancy-looking tablet on the kitchen counter and decided to snap a triumphant selfie with it, grinning like he just won the lottery. The absolute genius did not realize the tablet was synced to the family's shared photo cloud, which immediately uploaded his beaming mugshot to every other device in the house. The victim sat down that evening, opened her photo app, and found a stranger's smiling face waiting at the top of her camera roll. 34. Halloween masks lose their anonymity when worn in completely wrong seasons. One American crook strolled into a convenience store in the middle of March, wearing a full werewolf mask, fangs and all, and demanded the cash drawer with maximum dramatic flair. Police pulled the security footage and immediately noticed nobody else in town wore Halloween costumes in spring. A quick visit to the local costume shop revealed exactly one werewolf mask had been sold in the past 6 months, paid for with a credit card belonging to a guy who lived 3 blocks from the store. 35. Jewel thieves usually case a display before grabbing everything in sight, but one American crook just went for it like a kid in a candy store. Smashing through a glass case at a fancy boutique, this confident burglar swept up every shiny object in reach and bolted into the night, feeling like royalty. What the absolute fool failed to notice was a discreet tracking bracelet placed inside the case, specifically as bait for jewel thieves exactly like him. Police followed the signal in real time straight to his apartment before he finished pouring himself a celebration drink. 36. Fences make excellent dramatic obstacles in movies, but in real life they require knowing what is on the other side. One American criminal sprinting from police down a tight urban street spotted a sturdy fence and decided this was clearly his ticket to freedom. The absolute genius scaled it like an action hero, dropped down triumphantly on the other side, and looked up to find himself standing dead center inside the fenced courtyard of the local police precinct. Officers on smoke break watched him land, applauded the performance, and casually walked over with handcuffs. 37. Free food samples are designed to encourage customers, not feed an entire shoplifting operation. One American thief wandered through a grocery store stuffing items into his jacket, while aggressively sampling every cracker, cheese cube, sausage bite, and tiny cup of soup the staff offered. By the time he reached the exit, the absolute genius was so violently overstuffed he could barely walk, let alone outrun anyone. Security found him collapsed onto a display bench an hour later, still clutching a toothpick, surrounded by stolen merchandise, looking like a beached whale waiting peacefully for arrest. 38. Breaking into a locksmith's house is the single dumbest residential choice any criminal could possibly make. One American burglar picked the wrong front door on the wrong night and entered the home of a man who spent his entire career outsmarting locks for sport. The locksmith had personally booby-trapped every single mechanism inside his house just for the entertainment value, fully expecting this exact scenario someday. The absolute fool got snared by a closet door rigged with a noisemaker, trapped by a deadbolt that locked him inside the bathroom, and arrested in his underwear. 39. Handwriting analysis is bad enough without the same idiot leaving samples all over town. One American crook scribbled his robbery demands onto a crumpled paper bag and shoved it across the counter at a terrified cashier, feeling extremely intimidating. Detectives later compared the loopy, threatening note to a recent piece of mail intercepted at the post office. Specifically, a deeply emotional love letter the same guy had written to his ex-girlfriend that very morning. The absolute genius had used identical handwriting, identical paper, and even the same blue ink pen for both crimes. 40. Gift cards are not legal tender for mugging victims, a concept one American crook learned painfully. Cornering his target in a quiet parking lot, this aspiring criminal demanded cash with great menace. The victim, panicking and clever, handed over a long-expired gift card and assured him it had a fortune loaded on it. The absolute fool actually thanked her, drove straight to the store listed on the card, and walked inside to check the balance at the customer service counter. Security cameras captured his entire face, vehicle, and license plate within 90 seconds of his arrival. 41. Stealing porch packages is risky, but one American crook managed to pick the single worst box on the entire street. Snatching a sturdy cardboard parcel off a stranger's front step, this excited package pirate raced home and tore into it like Christmas morning. The absolute genius discovered the box contained a return shipment of professional-grade bear traps the homeowner was sending back to the manufacturer because they were defective and prone to snapping randomly. Within seconds of unwrapping, multiple traps did exactly that, clamping shut on his hand, leg, and arm simultaneously. 42. True crime fans love correcting tiny inaccuracies online, and one American fugitive simply could not resist the urge. Hiding from active warrants, this wanted man scrolled through a popular true crime Facebook group and stumbled across a post discussing his own case with one small detail slightly wrong. Unable to let the misinformation stand, the absolute moron typed out a furious correction explaining what really happened that night, posting from his real unprotected account with his real name and profile photo. Group admins screenshotted the comment and forwarded it to law enforcement within the hour. 43. Wireless networks broadcast their names to every device in the neighborhood, a fact one American dealer somehow never considered. Setting up his home internet connection, this entrepreneurial criminal needed a memorable network name and decided creativity was important. The absolute genius typed in Drug Dealer 1 and saved it as his permanent Wi-Fi identifier for all eternity. Neighbors picked it up while scrolling for connections, screenshots circulated around the block, and one concerned resident forwarded the image to police. Officers obtained a warrant based partly on the network name itself, walked in, and found everything advertised. 44. Phone scammers target random numbers all day long, which means eventually one of those numbers belongs to law enforcement. One American scammer running a classic IRS impersonation hustle worked his way down a sequential list of phone numbers, dialing each one with the same threatening script about unpaid taxes. The absolute genius accidentally hit the direct line of the exact police precinct currently running an active task force investigating phone scams. The detective who picked up calmly kept him talking, traced the call in real time, and dispatched officers to his location. 45. Robbing a taxi sounds quick and easy until your own technology betrays you. One American crook climbed into the back of a cab, threatened the driver, grabbed the cash, and bolted into the night feeling victorious. Back home, the absolute brainiac patted his pockets and realized his phone was missing somewhere in the back seat of the very taxi he just robbed. Without hesitation, he called his own number, reached the driver, and politely asked the man to please return the phone, generously providing his full home address so the driver could swing by with police. 46. Stealing a police car is dumb, but cranking the sirens for fun is on another level entirely. One American joyrider broke into an unattended cruiser, fired up the engine, and started cruising around town with a goofy grin spreading across his face. Unable to resist the shiny buttons, the absolute genius flipped on the lights and sirens because the noise sounded awesome echoing off buildings. Every officer in the city assumed a real pursuit was happening, converged on his location from all directions, and boxed him in completely within 4 short minutes. 47. Bribing a judge requires offering something the judge would actually want, a detail one American defendant catastrophically misjudged. Standing before the bench facing serious charges, this hopeful fool decided the wisest legal strategy was attempting to influence the outcome through a thoughtful gift. The absolute genius slid a $5 Subway gift card across the table with a hopeful smile, as if a foot-long sandwich could erase felony charges. The judge stared at the card, stared at him, then added a fresh bribery charge to the docket before lunch recess had even started. 48. Karma occasionally arrives faster than a getaway car, and one American burglar experienced this firsthand. Halfway through ransacking a random house, this overconfident crook glanced at a framed photo on the wall and felt his entire stomach drop through the floor. The absolute fool had broken into the home of his own parole officer, the exact person legally monitoring his behavior. Pure panic took over, all logical thought evaporated, and the trembling genius called the police on himself from the victim's own kitchen phone to confess before his parole officer arrived home. 49. Threatening letters work better when the writer does not include a complete return address. One American crook decided to terrify a local bank into handing over money through the power of the postal service, drafting a menacing demand letter full of dramatic threats. The absolute genius then signed off with "sincerely," followed by his full legal name, his street address, his apartment number, his zip code, and a cheerful little smiley face doodle at the bottom. Bank employees handed the letter to detectives, who basically just drove to the address printed on it. And there you have it, folks. 49 criminals who proved that committing crime and possessing brain cells are apparently 2 completely separate skill sets. From banana-wielding bandits to fugitives entering their own most wanted contests, these geniuses basically arrested themselves and saved taxpayers a fortune. If this lineup of legendary blunders made you laugh out loud, smash that like button, subscribe to BrainFumble, and ring the notification bell so you never miss the next masterpiece of stupidity. Share it with that one friend who somehow always gets caught. Now tell me down in the comments, which criminal earned the gold medal for dumbest move ever?